For Session Update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. The Senate E12 Education Finance Committee dedicated a hearing recently to examine the Teacher Retirement Association's unfunded pension liabilities. They also looked at Governor Dayton's plan to stabilize that fund. Here's that meeting.
Welcome to the Senate E12 Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 15th. We will announce a quorum when it arrives, but we're going to go ahead and start today. We are reviewing the section in the governor's budget regarding TRA funding and unfunded liabilities. And so if we could have the Teachers Retirement Association testifiers come to the table, please. Ms. Hacking,
yes,
welcome to the committee.
Thank you
please
very
introduce yourself for the tape.
Laurie Hacking, Executive Director, Teachers Retirement Association.
Jay Stoffel, Deputy Executive Director at the Teachers Retirement Association.
Thank you. And Ms. Hacking, we need you to pull this microphone right in front of your face. Thank you so much. Yeah,
sorry.
Much better.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present to you today. We're going to just give you some brief background information about TRA before plowing into, I think, an area that you're most interested in, and that has to do with the education, school aid funding, pension adjustment in the governor's education finance bill. A little background on TRA. We have nearly 190,000 members. We've been serving educators in Minnesota for over 100 years. That's 5 generations of educators. And you can see our numbers there, over 80,000 active teachers, over 63,000 retired, and quite a few deferred members who still have accounts with us and hope to get a benefit at some point in the future. Our assets are $20 billion, and we pay out $1.7 billion annually in payments. And I believe distributed at your desks is a map that shows the impact of not just our payments, but the 4 statewide pension systems and St. Paul, impact on each county and the number of retirees that we have in each county. So that gives you an idea of what our presence is in local communities. Our mission is both retirement security for teachers, but also we support the state's education system by attracting and retaining teachers. There are a number of studies which show that pensions are important to teachers in terms of recruitment and retention. Especially now, younger people, because of the financial decline we had in 08 and 09, younger people are much more sensitive to retirement security than they were in past years, and surveys are showing that because they realize the difficulties saving on their own and making a good investment return on their savings. So I won't go through all these surveys, but they do indicate that there's a rising importance and recognition of retirement security. And for teachers, there is a pay gap. You've heard people describe that, I'm sure, that to some extent they receive lower wages relative to comparably educated professionals in the private sector or non-teaching positions. So the benefits that they receive, whether it be through pensions, health care, so partly compensation for that pay gap. A little bit about our revenue sources. It's very important. Investment earnings that we earn on the contributions made by employees and employers over their career finance 73% of our benefits. So it's a very, very significant portion of our revenue. We have a slide here that tries to contrast our pension buck, as we call it, with that of other state pension plans. And you can see that for us, the investment return is a much more significant source of revenue. And it's for a couple of reasons. One is we have an excellent investment program. Our State Board of Investment has a great track record. But more importantly, we have been very disciplined in Minnesota to put money aside well in advance of having to pay benefits so that that money can earn and reduce the burden that would otherwise be on contributions coming from employees and employers.
Let me just note for the record that a quorum is present. Continue, please.
Thanks. I had a question here on the bottom, which is, well, what happens when investments fall short? And that has happened in recent years, especially the downturn in 08 and 09. And when they fall short, we find that we have to make adjustments. In 2010, we came forward with a package, and the legislature supported that. Governor Pawlenty signed it into law, and that was to reduce cost of living adjustments pretty significantly in the plan, as well as raise contributions. So when investments do fall short, we find we have to make adjustments.
Ms. Hacking?
Yes.
Excuse me. What was, in that 2010, what was the assumed rate of return reduced from and to?
In 2010, we made no adjustment in the assumed rate of return, but what happened was we had market losses in our assets, which reduced our funded ratio dramatically, and that made us consider significant benefit cuts as well as contribution increases to try to bring the system back into balance. So we did not at that time lower our investment assumption, but since then, I'm trying to exactly recall the year, I think it was 2012, 2013, there was a lowering of the investment return assumption for a temporary period, and then more permanently was lowered to 8%. For TRA, that actually hasn't quite happened yet. It was supposed to happen last year, but it was in the vetoed pension bill. So we're still awaiting that enactment of that, but it should have happened last year. And for the other systems, they went to 8 in the prior year, which would have been 2015.
Thank you. Continue with your testimony, please.
Okay, so I just want to emphasize here, Minnesota has a very long history of being disciplined about attending to their pension plans and making sure they are properly funded. And that has been a challenge, especially in our recent environment where there have been very volatile investment returns. Just backing up a little bit to paint a picture of why we are coming forward with additional adjustments to our plan and changes. In 2015, we had an experience study done, and all the systems did, most of the systems, statewide systems did. An experience study is done every 4 years at least, usually in the state, and it looks at all of our assumptions, how long people are living, what our investment returns are, what payroll salary growth is, all of the assumptions. And there were 2 major adjustments that are recommended. One was lowering the assumption. That's what we just spoke about for TRA. That would be from 8.5 to 8. And that tends to increase costs long term because that's the rate that's used as a discount rate for our liabilities. The other big change was updating our mortality tables. People are living longer, on average 2 years longer when we project out into the future, and you can imagine that has a big effect on costs. I like to tell people our oldest retiree is 111 years old, and we have 100 members, retirees who are over age 100. So we are a very long-lived population. These 2 changes created significant cost increases for us. And our board put together a proposal to both reduce cost of living adjustments in the future and raise contribution rates. But unfortunately, none of those were enacted last year, again, because of the veto and other problems. But one of the problems was seeking funding. Last year, we were asking for an employer increase of 1%, raising their contribution rate from where it is currently at 7.5 to 8.5, but there was not sufficient funding to offset those costs for the school districts. So that was a big barrier to being able to get the bill put into place. So this year, we set about working with the governor's staff during the interim, and the governor has proposed some funding for these increased costs, and I'm going to go over the detail of that in just a second. So the proposal that is before the legislature right now and the Pension Commission is considering is to reduce cost of living adjustments for retirees. Currently, our COLA, or annual increase, is 2% per year. This would lower it to 1% for 5 years and then to 1.5% after that. Actives would see the same reduction in their annual increases in the future. Those COLA reductions save approximately 2.66% of pay. We talk about everything as percent of pay, but it's equivalent to $124 million annually, or $1.5 billion over our projection period. So it's a very significant change and reduction. To give you an idea, last year, the COLA proposal that we had would have saved $1 billion. So this proposal saves more than, and cuts benefits more than what was proposed last year. For employers, I mentioned there's an increase in the rate proposed from 7.5 to 9.5, but because that's a significant jump, we propose to phase it in over 4 years at 0.5% per year, and we are requesting state pension aid to offset that, and I'll go into those details in a minute.
Ms. Hacking, just to note that we've used up about half of your time, so I see a lot of important slides here. I just want to make sure we get the most important information. Thank you.
We're on pace. So the pie chart on the right side of this is to demonstrate that our board worked to make this a balanced proposal, meaning not asking actives or retirees or employers to bear any huge portion or all of the burden of trying to solve this problem. So we tried to keep it balanced. So this page, I think, is what your committee would be very interested in. This shows the increased cost to school districts and charter schools that could occur or would occur under the contribution rate increase that we're proposing. We have sort of two columns here. One shows no payroll growth assumption, no assumption that the payroll will grow. The second column is that the assumption of 2.5% per year growth. We were asked, working with Pension Commission staff, to kind of show parameters, because quite frankly, we don't know whether or to what extent payroll will grow for the school districts. So this gives you kind of a range. The next to the last column is the aid that is proposed in the governor's budget. And you can see in the first 2 years it comes very close. Over 90% of the costs would be covered in his proposal. But in the second 2 years, the amount that he's proposing, it does not increase because they felt they didn't have the resources to cover it. So that's where there is a shortage in those second 2 years. And this just shows that if the proposal is enacted, our funded ratio, which is the ratio of assets to liabilities, we are now at around 71, 72%. So we have a significant unfunded liability that we're trying to deal with. You can see, excuse me, that if we enact the proposal, if the proposal is enacted, we would start to move toward 100% funded, attaining hopefully 89% funded in 30 years. I'll turn it over to Jay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the tape.
Jay Stoffel, Deputy Executive Director for Teachers Retirement Association. I am going to turn your attention, I'm on page 9, and have a description of the investment return assumption and why that's so important, and the dramatic impact it has on our liabilities and our financing. There's a lot of discussion. Today we are at an 8.5% return assumption as described by Ms. Hacking. We tried to reduce that to 8% last year, and we're attempting to do that again this year. But there's a lot of interest in what the rate should be. Many proponents are talking about going to a 7.5% return assumption. And what the TRA board is proposing is that we do a study before we embark on this change. It's a very changing the investment return assumption has a very dramatic effect. It's probably one of the most powerful powerful assumptions that we use in managing the pension plan. So to increase it or decrease it by even a small amount has a very significant impact. Every 4 years, as described by Ms. Hacking, we do a complete experience study to look at all of our assumptions, and our proposal is to do a study again that is actually due in 2 years' time. We just completed one about 2 years ago, so the next one will be rolling up in about 2 years from now, to do a study of that return and of that assumption, along with all of our other economic assumptions. So not only is it a powerful assumption, but it works very closely. It's like it's in a set of all the other assumptions that we use, along with salary increases, inflation, the mortality assumption, and all the assumptions work together as a set. So in our view, to just pick out the most powerful assumption and isolate that and try to change it by itself is not really the best way to administer the plan. We'd prefer to wait, do a study, do another experience study. So our proposal contains a provision that would reduce the return assumption to 7.5% for a 5-year period of time. And then after that time period, it would revert to 8%. But in the meantime, during that 5-year period, it would allow us to do 2 things. Perform another experience study, as we've described, that's coming in 2 years, but then look around the country and find out what other pension funds do to determine what this rate should be. This is nothing unusual or unique to our pension plan. All the public plans around the country have to determine what this rate should be going forward. One of the challenges is our time horizon is 60, 70 years. Teachers work for 30, 35 years, and then they retire and live another 30 years beyond that. That's our time horizon. That's the exercise of this is, what is our investments, what will they return in that time frame over 60 years? We receive good information from the State Board of Investment. They do an asset liability study, they get information from Wall Street, and what's readily available from Wall Street is information on a 10-year time horizon. So we have that information. That's a good input for us. That's good information for 10 years. We also have to answer the question, what about the remaining 50 years? How do we address that and work that into the complete assumption that we're using for the 60-year time period? So there should be a way to blend the short-term 10-year outlook along with the next 50 years. And that's what we would like to study in this in the interim, this 5-year period. Again, let's use a 7.5 for 5 years, then revert to 8%. And in that 5-year period, do this study of what other states do, what's a best practice as far as setting this rate. The other thing that's really important that we're considering is when you change the rate and you immediately go to 7.5%, that drives up liabilities significantly and puts the fund in a very precarious funding position unless the financing is behind that change. So again, our thinking is if we need to go to 7.5% return assumption, that seems to have a lot of interest and seems to be the direction that many parties are considering this year, and many funds around the country have gone to that level of an assumption. But let's figure out a way for the TRA to get there over a period of time, and maybe rather than try to get there in one fell swoop, ratchet it down, and in the meantime, fund that change along the way. So to make the goal 7.5%, again, we really don't see the urgency to make this happen immediately. We're looking at a 60-year assumption, 60 years out into the future. So let's take a careful, measured approach. Let's figure out a real good method to develop what the number should be, and then talk about financing it and funding it along the way. Making the change without the financing puts, again, TRA in a very precarious position financially. The fund just doesn't look good. We should find a way to finance it as those changes are made. To give you some idea, page 10 is an idea of some of the numbers behind what I'm saying. If you look at the first, on the left-hand column, $27.2 billion is the actuarial accrued liability under our proposal using the 7.5 for 5 years and then 8%. If we use a 7.5% return assumption from all years, that adds over $1 billion to our liability. And again, we need to find a way to finance that. Currently, under our proposal, we would be 74% funded, At 7.5% for all years, we would be 71% funded. And another important aspect of this, under our proposal, we get on a trajectory where we look like we're going to be 89% funded if all assumptions are met in the future. Changing to 7.5% for all years just keeps the fund at 70% funded for all years into the future for the next 30 years, and results in about a 3% contribution deficiency, meaning more money has to come into the plan to finance that, and that translates to over $100 million a year on top of what we're suggesting already in our legislative package. So again, it just gives you a sense of how powerful this assumption is, what's really behind the financing when we talk about a 7.5% return assumption, significant dollars. So again, we're proposing, let's find a way to get to 7.5, maybe take it down in steps and finance it along the way. Let's make that a goal.
Mr. Stoffel, as we're trying to think about this assumed rate of return, what was the rate of return last year? So we've had an 8.5% return assumption for our long-term assumption really for a long time. There was a period where it ratcheted down to 8% for a 5-year period, and then it reverts back to 8.5%. My question is, though, what was the actual rate of return?
We used a blended rate, I think, of...
The actual rate was 0%, roughly 0%.
Oh, the actual return.
Last fiscal year.
There was a 0 rate of...
That's right. That's with the fiscal year ending June 30th. And you may recall that right before June 30th, there was the Brexit vote, which had a huge impact on the markets. The Dow went down 900 points in 2 days. Since June 30th, we are up about 9%. So there's been a good recovery. There was a downturn there right before June 30th. So that throws a lot of people off. Our actual returns long-term have been over 8%, 8.7, 8.9% roughly. In more recent years, they've been lower, again, because of the 2008-2009 downturn. Has quite an impact on our 10-year return.
Yes. Well, if you could just explain for the committee, though, what happens then, I think we know, but I think it's just important to know. So when the rate of return is 0%, but the benefits are paid out, assuming there's an 8.5% return in just 1 year, let's just take that 1 year, what did that do to the pension stability?
It does lower,
in dollars. Thank you.
Madam Chair, it does lower our funded ratio in that year. If it's just 1 year, that's not worrisome. If it's repeated, or if it's a very large decrease, which is what we experienced in 08-09, then we need to do something to correct the situation. And that's in fact what was done in 2010 to correct for the huge downturn in 08-09. So what really matters, it's not just 1 year, because we go up and down. We've had returns that have been double-digit in some recent years. What really matters is the pattern over the longer periods of time that you have to worry about.
Thank you. Please continue.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll continue on with the next slide is on page 11. It gives you a graphic of what happens at the 7.5% return assumption with our proposal. I think I mentioned that we basically just flatline for the next 30 years. Our actuary did a projection with our benefit package. If it passed as introduced and using a 7.5% return assumption rather than the one we're proposing, our funding ratio would flatline at 70% for the next 30 years. Without our package passed, the fund would drop pretty significantly over the next 30 years to about a 37% funded ratio. So we really do need our funding package in place. That's matter number one. Choosing the investment return assumption is also important, but as described, we have approach for that. The next page is some information that the TRA board considered as we were talking about increasing contribution rates. And that can happen on the employer side, it can happen on the employee side. One of the data points that the board reviewed to answer that question was our history. And if you look at the blue line, the top line here, that's the employer rate, and that has been significantly higher than the employer rate for much of TRA's history. The bottom orange-colored line is the employee rate. There was a time back in the 70s, early 80s, when the TRA plan was underfunded, similar kind of issues that we're addressing today, and the employer rate was significantly higher than the employee rate. They came together in the late 90s, early 2000, when the TRA plan became fully funded, and at that time the rates were reduced for both the employee and the employer to be equal at 5.5% of pay, and have remained at that level until about 2010, when the reforms took place then and ratcheted up to 7.5% each on each side. The other piece of information that the board reviewed as far as how to address the contribution rate increase is looking at some national averages. TRA charges both the employee and the employer 7.5% of pay. Those are the two bars on the left-hand side. Teacher plans in the country, on the employee side, the average is 6%. So in Minnesota, the teachers pay quite a bit higher than the national average. And on the national average on the employer side, it's approaching 13% on the contribution rate, where in Minnesota it's 7.5%. So, and there's some information on the right side, the regional comparisons, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and so forth are there for your information as well. So those pieces of information were reviewed along with the concern about the teacher shortage, and again, raising the contribution rate on the members does not really help the situation with decreasing teacher pay at a time when we're trying to do something as much as possible to address the teacher shortage and not take more out of the pockets of the members. So a lot of different things that were considered to get to the board to a decision on where that division would be.
Thank you for the good presentation. I know we're running short on time, but I just want to make sure that what is the rate that is being, that the employees, that your plan is looking for an employer rate contribution increase? What about the employees? What is that? What rate is that?
Madam Chair, there would be no change in the rate to the employees, so it would remain at 7.5%.
So the employees would not contribute more, but the employers would contribute more?
The employers, Madam Chair, would contribute 2% more, 9.5%, and the employees would remain at 7.5%.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next testifier is, oh, I see two questions. If you could hold, please. First, we have Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you tell me, is this, are these changes in the employee contribution, employee-employer, are they contractual, are they contract negotiated?
Madam Chair, Senator, no. The contribution rates, the benefits, this actuarial return assumption that we're talking about, just about all that we do is set in statute. None of it is negotiated or contractual.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if if instead of going up 2% on the employer and 0 on the employee, if you moved the set of 9.5 to 8.5 and the other one 7.5 to 8.5, the numbers would be the same. It'd be just a different way of getting the dollars. Is that correct?
Mr. Stoffel.
Madam Chair, Senator, right? You could adjust the numbers either way. It's a statutory change, but that's.
And then just one follow-up.
Senator Dames.
Sorry, if I could just clarify the
Ms.
question. The employee rate increase is not worth as much as the employer rate, which may sound odd, but it's because there's a refund value. When employee contributions go up, the revenue we get out of it is only about 80%, because we owe a refund for teachers who terminate and don't stay in the system. So it's not quite dollar for dollar.
Senator Dames.
And then one other question. Thank you, Madam Chair. The chair had asked about the one-year return last year, and it was, I think, either at 0 or 0.2% underwater. I don't remember which it was. What was it for the last 3 years? Do you know what that average is?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffel.
I do have that if I can find it quickly. We have a 3-year average and a 5- and a 10-year average from the State Board of Investment. I brought that with. Bear with me for a second.
It was higher.
Here we go. This is as of June 30, 2016. Just to be clear, the one-year return Oh, these are calendar years.
While you're finding that.
Madam Chair, maybe
Yes.
they could just get,
Yes, if you could just-
offline that to me.
Thank you, Senator Dames. I think we'd all like to see those 3- and 5-year averages as well. So if you could get those to the committee administrator, that'd be great.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair, we'll
Mr.
get those
Stoffel.
to the committee.
I think Senator Pratt has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Thompson, we talked briefly about your beta. I was wondering, do you know what your beta is? And would you, with a lower rate of return, or let me ask this, do you believe we're taking additional risk that we shouldn't be in order to meet that high assumed rate of return?
Mr. Stoffel.
Madam Chair, Senator Pratt, I was an asset manager when I was with the Duluth Pension Plan for 22 years, and we had a handle on beta and all of that. At TRA, it's a very different exercise. We are not asset managers. We are benefit managers and plan administrators. I really would defer that question to the experts at the State Board of Investment who manages the portfolio. I really don't keep track of our beta on a monthly basis. It's really left to the experts at the State Board of Investment.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Our next testifiers are the St. Paul Teacher Retirement Fund Association. I'm afraid we're running a few minutes late, so you could come right up, please. We have Jill Schertz, Executive Director, and Christine McDonald, Deputy Director. Welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jill Schertz. I'm the Executive Director of the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association. With me today is Christine McDonald, Deputy Director. And we'd be happy to cede all of our time and just leave the presentation. We'd have no issue with that whatsoever.
Well, if you want, please give us a brief run through, and we will take the presentation with us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll go very quickly through an overview of who we are, because we are a separate entity from TRA, who you just heard from. Skipping right to the first page, we're one of the oldest retirement associations in the state. We've been providing retirement security to St. Paul teachers for 107 years now. We're governed by a board of trustees that's a combination of active and retired teachers, as well as an ex officio member from our school district. We're subject to oversight, obviously, by the legislature and specifically the LCPR, subject to audit by the Office of the State Auditor, and we have our actuarial and funding assumptions performed by a nationally recognized firm, Gabriel, Roeder, and Smith. I think this committee, more than many others, you're very familiar with the school district, so I won't spend time on this. Depending on the year, we're either the largest or the second largest, and I think that's a matter of pride from year to year. From our perspective, obviously, we take great pride in this job and the covenant that we have with our teachers to provide retirement security, not just for this generation of teachers, but for those to come. When we look at our teachers and why we're doing this job, we think that they're gatekeepers for some of the most important social issues and economic issues that we face, and the role we play is important. When we look across our membership, going to page 3, very similar to TRA and many of the teachers' organizations that you'll see, we are dominated by women, which you'll hear about later as we talk about mortality. 73% women, 27% men. It's a diverse workforce, solidly middle class, and of the $111 million of benefits that we pay, that's distributed around 59 different counties in Minnesota, and 88% of that stays within the state. Just a word or two on page 4 about our demographics. Our plan is divided into a basic and a coordinated, just like TRA. The majority of our active members are now in the coordinated plan, and the major distinction between the two plans, same as TRA, is that our basic members, you'll see that they receive a higher monthly benefit and a higher annual benefit, because they do not receive Social Security along with their retirement benefits. And they also paid more into the plan during their active teaching career. When we look at the coordinated members, we have an average monthly benefit of around $1,500. And after tax, we think of that as about $1,200. So we think that these are reasonable benefits that provide a stable retirement, but certainly not a sole source of retirement income for our members. When we look at our membership base, it's about 12,000 strong. made up of active, deferred, and retirees. Flipping to the next page, I'd like to give you just a brief overview of the recent history of the fund. This fund, if we look back as recently as 2012, from my perspective, would have been in very poor financial shape with a deficiency of over 6%. I've only been on board for 3 years, so I don't take credit for this, but the board and my predecessor certainly engaged with the legislature in some very serious reform measures. They proactively lowered their COLA they froze it for a few years, lowered it to 1% and kept it at 1%. That's made a very meaningful difference. They enacted some very serious early retirement reforms. And then 2 years ago, we proactively went from 8.5% to a flat 8% our investment return assumption. At that time, we did that with no additional funding. So all in, as we look at this fund today with no other changes, I would say it's on a very solid footing with 0.67% deficiency, which in our business is very close to break even. Now, having said that, this fund has a historic underfunding. So when you look at our funded ratio of the plans, we are at the lowest level currently. On an actuarial basis, we're at about 63% right now. That level of funding, while the fund is on a very good trajectory when you look at the funded lines, it's moving up in the right direction. Being at 63% makes us more vulnerable to volatility. So we are keen to make sure that we address that. Now, the reason we're here today, it's very similar to what you've heard. The two primary factors as we move on to page 6 are the need to address something in common with all of the funds, and that's the cost of mortality. Simply that the projection that our current employees and young retirees will live on average about 2 years longer, which means we're paying benefits longer. And the fact that our fund is proposing that we proactively adopt the 7.5 investment return assumption. Our proposal is to do that in this legislative session and remain at 7.5. We think that that's a very conservative approach. We think it's from fiduciaries of the fund, we think that's the right answer to place the fund on a conservative footing. As well, it's the recommendation of our actuaries, as well as in the assessment by SBI. We also think it's consistent with the direction of funding of public pension plans across the country. Now, these two things, mortality and 7.5%, unfortunately, do drive up the liabilities of the fund immediately. They will, over the 30-year period, add about $130 million of liabilities to this fund. On a more immediate basis, what that would do, if there were no other changes, it would take our funded ratio down below 60%, which is an area we don't want to venture into. So with that, our legislative package this year contains a number of proposals. First, we're proposing to increase our employer contribution rate to 9.5%, which is consistent with what you've heard from TRA. We'll eliminate our automatic COLA triggers so that no matter what the funded status is, that COLA doesn't automatically move up. We'll implement some assumption changes that all of the funds have agreed to. As well, we'll reset our amortization 4 additional years to move it from 2042 to 2047. I want to just touch briefly on what I think is a very important point. Typically, when somebody in my position would come to you with a plan like this, we would be likely to include an employee contribution increase. So we recognize that that's anomalous. In this case, we're not recommending that for several reasons. One, the cost of mortality exists already in our retired base. We believe that that's not necessarily fair to place that entire burden on the active teachers. As well, we do have an anomaly currently with the regular contribution rate between the employer and the employee. While we acknowledge that our district has been a very good partner to us and they are working with us to address this, the actual regular rate now is 1% higher for our current employees, and that condition has existed for some time. All in, our employer does pay 10%, but a portion of that is in a supplemental rate that is intended to address past underfunding. So we're not here to say that our employer doesn't pay a fair amount, but right now on the regular rate, they pay less than the employee. So combining the impact of mortality and that disparity, this proposal contemplates the 3% being on the employer. As we turn to the next page, like TRA you heard previously, we are proposing to phase that increase in over 4 years. Similarly, a portion of that has been provided for in the governor's budget. And similar to TRA, we are joining them in supporting the proposal that that funding actually come through the education formula instead of through each individual district. When we look at this proposal, if we were to do nothing and simply take on mortality and the 7.5% return, if you look at page 8, you would see our line that is currently going in the right direction, the one we all like to see. That line would instead downward trend and flatline at about 52%, which as fiduciaries compels us to make this recommendation. With this proposal, which again contemplates the employer increase and $5 million of state direct funding, this line reaches 97% in the amortization period. And again, that's our proposal. On the right-hand side, we've presented in terms of percent of pay. You can see the itemized list of the additional costs for mortality, the 7.5 assumption, the savings measures as well. This would put the fund from a percent of pay perspective really just about break even. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just one question. I thought I understood you to say that there is no employee contribution, and I wanted to hear your rationale for that again. If you could restate why there's no employee increased contribution.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. The rationale for that is twofold. When we look at the additional costs that are being added to the fund, one of them is mortality, and that is the cost of retirees living longer. The estimate is about 2 years, which again drives up the amount of payments we actually make out of the fund. A fair portion of those retirees actually exist today. They are no longer in the active roles, and a portion of them are on the active. To put the entire burden of mortality on solely the active teachers, we think sort of misstates the balance of the liability. So that's the first point. The second point.
Let me ask you before you leave that point.
Yes.
I think you, if that were the reason, you could use that rationale for all changes in the retirement proposal. You could say we cannot change the assumed rate of return because it only affects the active teachers. So I'm not sure that that's I just want to mention that.
So, Madam Chair, let me
Yes.
clarify. I probably didn't do that justice the first time. There are some changes where it's reasonably clear which portion of the population is driving the change or where does the burden or the benefit fall. This is one that should not be borne entirely by the actives because a fair portion of the people that are living longer right now are currently drawing retirement benefits. To say that that burden would solely be on the actives through an employee contribution increase would be asking the actives to bear the burden for increased longevity. But that's only part of the reason. The second reason is when you look at the current employee contribution rates in St. Paul, employees are currently paying 7.5% and have been for a few years. The 7.5%, as you look on a national average, is reasonably and significantly higher than the national average. They're paying about 77% currently of their normal cost. So by any measure, they're paying a very fair share of the cost of their benefit. And as well, the employer regular contribution has been lower than their contribution for a number of years. So when we look at how to true up the contributions, the first step is to true up the employer contributions to get them to parity before we increase the employee portion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So on page 6 or 7, the bottom of the chart says the employer also pays a supplemental amount of 3.84% and $800,000 annually to address certain past underfunding.
That is correct.
And you believe there's a true-up needed in addition to that?
Yes, Madam Chair. When you think about a pension contribution, and it's reflected this way in the statutes as well. There are several components. One is, what is the regular contribution rate? And in Minnesota, what you would see in almost all of the plans right now is that the employees and employers would have an equal rate for employee-employer. And from time to time, you'll see across a number of funds, if there's an incidence of past underfunding, a supplemental assessment is placed on the fund to try to make up for the past. So, as I stated earlier, it is absolutely true, and we acknowledge it, that the district combining those two things is paying 10%. But there was a point in time where instead of keeping pace with the normal rate paid with the employees, as you would expect, they stopped keeping pace with the normal rate, and the two were blended. And when you do that, that's like saying you had a tax assessment and a normal tax rate, and you stopped paying increases on your normal tax rate, and you blended that with your assessment from the past and said, that's your total rate, I shouldn't pay any more. What you should see at all points in time is this normal rate, the employee and the employer at parity, and then whatever you're supposed to pay for your past underfunding is completely separate.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Senator Dames.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It appears here you're going to fund that 3% of the employer in over a period of 4 years. Can you tell me, once that's fully phased in, what the cost per year is going to be, the estimated cost for the employer?
Yes, sir. Madam
Ms.
Chair,
McDonald.
Senator Dames, if you turn to page 8, when this is fully phased in, based on what our current covered payroll is, that would be $7.8 million. And again, part of that right now is contemplated in the governor's budget.
Further question, Senator Dames.
And that would be above and beyond the direct allocation of $5 million you're asking for, correct?
Ms. McDonald.
Madam Chair, Senator Dames, yes, that's correct.
And I would just comment that I understand your concern about the longevity costs being borne solely by the active teachers. But I would say, I think we need to keep in mind that these costs that are being sent to the Education Committee for inclusion to pay for these unfunded liabilities or assumption rates that are higher than market rate. I would just say we should note that those entire costs that you're asking the state to bear are borne by the students. So I think that's an important concept to keep in mind. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. All right. Our next testifier is Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement, Susan Lincheski and Rachel Barth. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the tape.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Susan Lincheski, and I'm the Executive Director of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement.
Ms. Lincheski, welcome to the committee.
This is Rachel Barth, the Deputy Director of the Commission.
Hello,
Ms.
Madam
Barth,
Chair.
welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Oh, yes. My name is Rachel Barth, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Pension Commission.
So we have a short slide presentation here as well. We thought we'd just give you a couple minutes of description of what the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement is. It's a 14-member bipartisan bicameral commission that really focuses in on pension and retirement issues, as well as any bills that are coming through the legislature. So we would be hearing the plans proposals. Those bills will have already come before the commission, and they've considered them. We meet weekly during the session on Tuesday nights, and just on February 7th, we did consider all 4 of the bills. We heard testimony last night on the teacher's retirement bill and the St. Paul teacher's bill, and next week we'll hear testimony on MSRS, the Minnesota State Retirement System bill, as well as the para police and fire funding request. To date, the commission has not yet taken any action on the bills, so we will continue to consider this in the context of some of the other changes that the commission is looking at.
Ms. Lincheski, so these bills have been before the Pension Commission. And my question would be, or my suggestion, that the Pension Commission should carry these budget targets. So continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moving on to slide 3, the Pension Commission would look at these requests in the context of what are the sources, well, in the context really of the fact that the plans are underfunded. So as mentioned earlier, TRA is at approximately 73% funded, and St. Paul teachers at a little over 60% funded. The Pension Commission would look at this in the context of how can we try to fix this underfunding. The sources of funding for the plans are more dollars in, but the flip side to that is looking at less dollars out. So the commission will look at both sides of that equation and try to craft some solution to the situation. As mentioned, the funding in would be more employer contributions, also more employee contributions, and of course better investment returns. We can't do anything about the last item, since that is over at the State Board of Investment, but we certainly have to deal with the impacts of the recent low level of investment return. When we look at cost savings or reducing the benefit dollars going out of the funds, we are looking at the full range of benefit changes that could be made, and there are lots of things that potentially could be done. The one that the plans are proposing really focuses in on the COLA, which is an automatic annual percentage increase in the pension benefit being paid to retirees. So that is the focus of the plan's proposals. As mentioned, the teacher's retirement proposal would go from 2% to 1% for 5 years and then back up to 1.5%. St. Paul teachers and teachers retirement fund are looking at eliminating something that we consider where we call the COLA trigger, which is an automatic increase in the COLA when certain funding thresholds are reached. For instance, in the case of TRA, if the plan were to reach 90% funded, the COLA would automatically go up to 2.5%. So those are being eliminated in their proposals.
So Madam Chair,
Yes.
and committee members.
Ms. Barth.
Thank you. So this chart just lays out some general membership data to give you a better idea of how the plans compare to each other, and it's MSRS General, Parageneral, TRA, and St. Paul Teachers, which are the biggest plans in the state of Minnesota. And this data is all based on active and retired members who are coordinated with Social Security, so they do receive Social Security. It was mentioned earlier the difference between basic and coordinated, so I just want to make sure that everyone understands these are coordinated members. And I just want to explain some of these categories in a little bit more detail. The first category is the accrual rate, which is the multiplier or percentage used to calculate the final benefit and is multiplied by the member's high five average salary and then the years of service. So the higher the accrual rate, the larger the benefit. MSRS and Parageneral plans use a 1.7% accrual rate, and TRA and St. Paul teachers use a 1.9% accrual rate. The investment return assumption, which we've been talking about a lot today, like we've said, is the rate of investment return the plans assume will occur each year. Currently, it's 8% for MSRS, Para, and St. Paul teachers, and 8.5% for TRA. MSRS, Para, and St. Paul are all proposing dropping that rate down to 7.5%. And like TRA explained, they are proposing 7.5% over 5 years and 8% thereafter. And then the vesting period is the number of years an employee must work before they are eligible to receive a pension. So if an employee leaves before they satisfy that requirement, they are given a refund of their contributions plus interest. The employer contributions stay with the plan. So the vesting period is 5 years for MSRS and Para, and 3 years for TRA and St. Paul teachers. And then you can just kind of look over more closely the demographics of active membership and retiree membership, the average salary of active members, and then the average annual pension. And you can kind of see that's really influenced, like I was describing, a number of factors like the accrual rate and then also how many years people tend to stay in their jobs within those plans. And then further down, the employer and employee contribution rate, and as St. Paul was discussing earlier, the employer contributions for TRA and St. Paul include the supplemental employer contributions, so you can see that total. And then the last little bit is the COLA. And you can see that Para and St. Paul currently provide a 1% COLA, and MSRS and TRA provide a 2% COLA, and COLAs are provided annually and they are compounded.
This is a comparison.
Ms. Linczewski?
Thank you. Excuse me, Madam Chair. This is a comparison. We were asked to sort of provide a little comparison here, I guess, among the plans, and that's the Rachel's discussion. And then this is a comparison of their funding proposals. The largest of the plans in the state, Para General, is not asking for any funding increase right now this year. MSRS General, you can see here, they are requesting an employer rate increase from 5.5% to 8%. And that would be over a 3-year period. They'll go up 1.5% in the first year, and then out in year 3, up another 1%. They are also seeking a change in the statute so that the employee contribution rate would increase from 5.5% to 6%. We've already gone through the other two, the two plan proposals. Those are out there as well for comparison's sake. With regard to funding, this is comparing the funding situation for each of the plans. And for an apples-to-apples comparison, we are giving you that, applying a 7.5% investment return assumption, which of course has not been enacted yet, but is in the proposals for at least, well, for all the plans except for teachers' retirement. So as you can see, MSRS is at 76.8%, Para at 68.8%, TRA at 65%, and St. Paul teachers at 57.8%. These numbers will kind of vary from chart to chart when you look at other sources because we're using market value of assets. Other charts will use actuarial value of assets, and slightly other, some of the other assumptions that are used will sometimes result in slightly different percentages here, but for the sake of comparison, you can at least see the relative size of the underfunding.
So, Madam Chair.
Oh, Ms. Linczewski, before we leave that slide, or those two slides, we noticed that Para is not asking for any increases, and yet it has its liabilities, its unfunded levels are not as good as the other pension plans. So why is the Para not asking for an increase?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Linczewski.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it does. Madam Chair, Para is not as good as MSRS in terms of its funding ratio, but it is better than the other two plans. Para, for a variety of reasons, decided, their Board of Trustees decided that they were not going to seek funding increases this year. I think they are in the process of absorbing some benefit from a change in one of their assumptions. It's an assumption relating to combined service annuities. Based on an experience study that was just completed, they're going to achieve about $1 billion additional increase in, well, shortfall, or excuse me, reduction in their liabilities as a result of this change. So for, I don't think this number works in the benefit of that change in the assumption.
So my question would be, I don't understand exactly what that benefit was that they were able to renegotiate regarding the annuities, or the combined annuities, I think you said, but is that option open to the other pension plans?
Madam Chair. Thank you. Madam Chair, the experience study that was conducted on these combined service annuities was done across all the plans. It was done by the Commission's actuary, Deloitte. They completed it last summer, I believe, and then reported their results back to the plans. All of the plans did achieve some funding or some liability decrease, so they were able to improve their positions. The biggest change, though, was to Para, significantly so.
Thank you. Ms. Linczewski, so the other plans also did the combined service annuities option as well? The outcome just wasn't as dramatic. Is that
That's-
correct?
Yes, Madam
Thank you.
Chair, that is correct.
Ms. Barth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to give you another overview of the governor's budget proposal for TRA and St. Paul teachers. So the governor recommended a 2% employer contribution increase phased in over 4 years, so 0.5% each year. And this is funded through the school aid formula. This recommendation matches TRA's current funding proposal. However, the budget fully funds the governor's recommended 1% total increase for fiscal year 18 and 19, and that funding is carried through to fiscal year 20 and 21. But the money does not include additional amounts for the additional 1% increase that's phased in over the fiscal year 20 and 21. And again, to point out, the payroll growth was not included in the allocation, which does leave a shortfall from year to year. The budget provides $21.5 million for fiscal year 18, which is that 0.5% employer increase, and $43.1 million, which is that total 1% employer increase for fiscal year 19, 20, and then 21. And that's where you can really see where there is no payroll growth that's factored in. And then the governor also provided more of like a comprehensive package of recommendations. And for TRA, he recommended lowering the COLA, removing the COLA triggers, resetting the amortization period, which is a 30-year amortization period, so resetting that, and reducing the investment return rate to 7.5%. And so that last piece differs, as we've discussed, from TRA's current funding proposal, which is the 7.5 for 5 years, and then back up to 8% thereafter. So the governor's proposal for St. Paul teachers is similar. He also provided, recommended a 2% employer contribution increase phased in over 4 years. So again, that 0.5 increase each year and funded through the school aid formula. But this is different than St. Paul's funding proposal because St. Paul requested a 3% employer contribution increase and a $5 million direct state aid. So that's separate $5 million, which the budget does not provide. The budget, again, fully funds the governor's recommended 1% total increase for fiscal year 18-19, and that's carried through to fiscal 20 and 20, but it does not include additional amounts for the recommended 1% increase phased in over 20 and 21. And again, just to say, payroll growth was not included, which is illustrated. The budget provides $1.3 million for fiscal 18, and then $2.6 million for 19, 20, and 21. And I want to make a correction. I apologize. This was a copy and paste error. The governor did not recommend lowering the COLA. Like we've said, St. Paul is at 1% already, so he did not make that recommendation, so I apologize for that. But he did recommend removing the COLA triggers, resetting the amortization period, and reducing the investment return rate to 7.5%, which matches TRA's funding proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Barth. How much did the governor's veto cost our pensions? Ms. Linczewski.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. We didn't bring along that data, but it was significant. I mean, tens of millions of dollars, and we could certainly get you that. So I'm talking spread across the plans, but it was significant. The inability to move the COLA down effective last January 1st, or just a month and a half or so ago, was a significant issue for the plans in terms of not being able to achieve those funding or those liability savings.
If you could get that information for us, please. Thank you. Any further questions, members? Thank you very much. Members, our last presentation today is the Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence. We have Mark Havman, the Executive Director. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Havman. Please introduce yourself for the tape.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. My name is Mark Haven. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence. I'd like to preface my testimony, first of all, with two comments. First of all, I want to thank and congratulate this committee for this type of hearing today. 95% of the time, these issues are discussed within the context of public sector retirement interests and ensuring a secure retirement for our public sector workers. That, of course, is a vitally important consideration, but it's not the only consideration when discussing these plans. And it is very much very important to provide a sense of what all this means from the taxpayer perspective, and in the case of this committee, from a kid's perspective. And I would argue very strongly that kids are very much a stakeholder in a fiscally responsible public sector defined or public sector retirement design. The second comment I'd like to make is just to acknowledge that ever since we started investigating this topic many years ago, we've remained agnostic when it comes to the actual form of what a public sector retirement design should look like. Our concern has always been figuring out a way to make sure that a adequate, high-quality retirement system is afforded to our public sector workers, but at the same time, we reduce the exposure and risk to taxpayers and public services in the management of that plan. And as you will see in my presentation today, I feel like we have a very long way to go on that. I wanted to start by providing sort of a big picture perspective and thinking about gaps. I find it interesting to compare and contrast these two gaps that exist, one of which is on, I would argue, full boil. We have a lot of legislator and media discussion surrounding our transportation needs, a lot of calls with respect to how overdue attention is to the matter, and a lot of urgency with respect to addressing this in a very prompt way. The other one, I would argue, is on simmer at best. At the same time, it shapes the destiny of every aspect of state government service delivery in the state. The state and local pensions is not just teachers, that includes all of our state level public sector defined benefit plans. But as you see, the funding shortfall is larger, the nature of the funding gap is more immediate, and no less importantly, sort of the key rate issue that surrounds these sorts of things is much higher. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. What I had hoped to do as much as possible is to avoid the terms of art that exists in defined benefit discussions, and try to bring this home as best I can to the issues of what this actually means for education finance. And just to provide a snapshot with respect to TRA, since this is the Education Finance Committee, the assets that we should have under management right now to pay for benefits already earned in this state is $26.7 billion on a market value basis. The assets we have under management is only $19.4 billion. We have a $7.3 billion shortfall. If you do the division, it comes out to about $9,000 per pupil. And no less importantly, that shortfall is based on investments achieving an average annual return of 8.5% per year going forward. If we say that it's going to be less, then the shortfall is much greater, and the assets that we should have in hand right now should be much larger. I think it's really important in talking about this to put some of the past fixes and sustainability efforts into some context. To the legislature's benefit and to the pension commission or the pension plans credit, we have stepped up to the plate many times over the past several years with fixes that were necessary to address funding problems. What this chart does is break down what the causes of those unfunded liabilities, the growth in unfunded liabilities are by the various factors. So any bar that goes up increased the liability, any bar that goes down decreased the liability. So for example, starting with the red figures, salary growth has been much lower over the past 14 years. And by the way,
Mr. Haveman, we just have the black and white ones, but I see
I apologize.
We can't exactly see the red from here.
There.
Thank you.
The negative numbers reflect improvements in the situation, and the bars that head north reflect increases in the unfunded liabilities. So, for example, salary increases. Salaries increases have grown far less than the assumptions that are used in putting these plans together, so that improved the situation. The change in plan provisions capture the basically the sustainability fixes of years past, and they are significant and substantial. There's no question there. The change in actual assumptions and methods includes things like mortality, and this 2002 to 2016 perspective begins where the fund was last at about 100%. And so the mortality issue that you talked about would fall under there. And it's a very real number. I don't know what it is for TRA, but I believe for all plans together, it's well over $700 million. But that has been offset over the course of this period by other changes that were made in actuarial assumptions and methods. And of course, you have the mergers which took place, which added to the tab as well. But the important thing to look at is the relative impact on those two biggest bars: investment income, which is the impact of falling short over time of the expected investment return, and no less the contribution deficiency, which is over $2 billion, yet at the same time, over the same period, combined contribution rates increased 50%, from 10% to 15% of salary over this period. I argue that those are the two things that need to be looked at when trying to understand where we are in the situation, why we're in this situation. Now, putting proposed fixes in some perspective, I think it's important to realize there's special challenges associated with mature plans. It's exceptionally difficult to successfully invest your way out of this problem because you only get investment returns on the assets you actually have to invest. And a mature plan like TRA has significant challenges in this respect. This is from their 2016 CAFR. Total cash in, all contributions and other miscellaneous revenues amount to $743 million. Total cash out is $1.7 billion. And so you have this sort of net cash flow dynamic here of over $1 billion going out rather than coming in. Now you can put the perspective of the fix that is being proposed in 2018 in that perspective, $22.6 million versus $1 billion. If a plan is underfunded, which we have right now, a return that is offered by the State Board of Investment will have more punch if the assets are there to take advantage of it. And when you have this outflow going on associated with a mature plan, it makes achieving those investment returns all the more difficult. And the problem is compounded when you have a situation when liabilities grow at the same rate as the expected returns. If there's one thing I would leave you with today with respect to the assumed rate of return, it's less about whether or not the State Board of Investment can get that. It's much more about using that number to discount future liabilities to create a present value of how much that is worth in present dollars, and then building a contribution policy around that. That is how we get into the trouble, because the fulcrum, the balance point, is 8%. And if you're unfunded, when the liabilities are growing at 8%, you need more than 8% or higher contributions or both to pick up ground. So putting the specific fixes in some perspective, holding school districts harmless for this is going to be expensive. It was already highlighted in terms of what the costs and the out biennium are. But then the question, of course, is what happens after fiscal year 2021? Are we going to pull $158 or $177 million out of the system and hope that over the course of the next 4 years things have changed dramatically and that allow us to do that? The other issue, too, I think, pertains to the para issue, which was raised earlier. You asked, Madam Chair, why they didn't come. I think a lot of it has to do with they didn't know the governor was going to step up to the plate. Because I look at their numbers and I can't figure out why they don't have a pension fix being proposed right now as well. So I would argue that in addition to whatever money you may be committing to MSRS, or the legislature should be committing to MSRS and TRA, we'd be seeing lobbying malpractice if local government officials didn't also look to step up to the plate, because they are also part of the system, and I think you can absolutely expect if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, you will see a request for that type of support coming from para as well in the out years. And again, for reference, just to put those numbers in perspective, the general funding increase for fiscal 18-19 is $371 million. So you can sort of get a sense of how much potential there is if the specific additional aid would go away, how much this burden would impose on any new formula aid that would be forthcoming in future years. So finally, let's assume for a moment that everything works out perfectly, that we actually can and do achieve an average annual return of 8% over the course of the next 30 years. The kicker on all this is that even if we accomplish that, there's still a very high likelihood that we'll be needing much higher contribution increases over that time. And the reason is that these investments are incredibly volatile. And how the sequence of returns materialize over the course of 30 years, combined with how the cash flow matches up with that, will influence whether or not we have big contribution increases, no contribution increases, or something in between. There are an infinite number of ways that a 8% return, a compounded 8% return can materialize over the course of 30 years. The Rockefeller Institute of Government did what's called Monte Carlo simulations, where you basically create returns over and over and over again of all possible permutations to figure out how these things could materialize over time. And they have two examples just to show how the same ending point 30 years later can have dramatically different impacts on how much you have to contribute to these sorts of funds. The top, since you don't have it in color, the top line represents a situation where higher returns come later in the 30-year sequence. And as a result, in this case, modeling on a 7.5% assumed return, the employer contributions jump from about 13% of payroll all the way up to 22% of payroll after a while. Conversely, if you are fortunate to have higher returns early and gain some of the extra compounding advantage that creates, your contributions can go down, but you have roller coasters. This, by the way, assumes that the annual required contribution is met every single year, and I would note that that hasn't happened with TRA in the last 10 years. So the point is there is extraordinary volatility associated with these sorts of things. There is no such thing as a guaranteed 7.5% or 8% return in the future. The volatility that exists is such that we have to be willing to address that volatility with our contribution increases if we choose to approach this. And if there is a problem that we face here in this state, is that we want it both ways. That was a mistake. We want the higher investment returns that investment in equities and higher risk assets offer, but we want stable, predictable contribution policies. You can't have it both ways. You have to choose one or the other. So I accidentally shut off my slideshow, but fortunately I have one left, and that's on your last page there. What does it all mean for E12 finance? Absent more substantive reform, we'd argue that we have almost a certain future of much higher pension contributions. And the point is this: there's an economic reality lurking here behind the scenes. We can have endless debates over what the assumed rate of return should be, but ultimately that's just how we approach the thing. The reality is we are going to be paying these people, and we should be paying these people, and we need to do what's necessary to pay these people. And if we find that the contributions to do this in a fiscally responsible way are just too much, then we need to think about other forms of reform of our pension system that can accommodate what we expect and want from our public services and our tax dollars, but also support public sector employees and teachers going forward. The question, we argue, is not if E12 finance is going to be impacted, but when. because there's all sorts of things, as we've seen today, of tweaks and adjustments that can be made with this assumption and that assumption. We can present pension reality most any way we want to. And the challenge before us is largely, when are we going to face the realities that do exist and make the necessary decisions that have to be made. And they're tough decisions. I don't envy anyone who has to make those decisions, but they do need to be made. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Haveman. I'm wondering if you probably can't speculate on this except in a general sense, but if there were equal employee contributions made as the proposals are seeking for the employer contributions, that certainly would increase the amount of assets to be invested. And I'm just wondering if there's a way, I don't know if a Monte Carlo simulation would be the way, but to see what that would look like with our liability issues, if in fact the employee contributions increased at the same amount as the employee contributions.
Madam Chair, members, I'm sure that there's ample opportunities to do exactly just that. I guess the point that I would make is that I would echo a concern that some of the previous testifiers have made in terms of the equity issue associated with that. Because so much of what the pension contributes, an increasingly significant amount of pension contributions, are designed to amortize past liabilities and to take and to have salary from current employees continue in larger shares to support the failure to adequately fund these things in the past, really, in my opinion, creates a significant equity issue.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, members? Well, it's a sobering picture for us to contemplate. I thank you for your testimony. I thank all who brought these numbers and realities to us. And I would reiterate that it is affecting our ability to fund students' education. We have to realize that. Thank you very much. What do we have for next? Okay. This committee is adjourned until Monday.